This is the Conditionals and Loops Activity in JavaScript. I have the project open in code, and I have the README file open here. Let's read through. So, given some problem statements, which will be expressed through tests, we want to implement solutions for each of those problem statements using some conditionals and loop constructs that are available in our programming language. We have a few different conditionals and loops. Let's start with the conditionals. So the three main ones that are in most languages are going to be your if or if-else blocks, a switch case statement, and a ternary operator. And then for loops, there are usually a for and a for each loop, although not every language has a for each loop, but for and for each. Those are two different loops. And then there are do while loops and while loops. So those are the main loops that are available. Some languages have other loops as well and other conditionals as well. Looking down, starting with objective 1, what we're going to do is we're going to make the person name to display string work. Person name represents a class that has the different parts of a name, so first name, middle name, last name, prefix, and suffix, all contained in a single object representing a person's name, and the toDisplayString will simply format that and then give us back the value, the string value of that name. So we want to make those pass. In objective 2 in a little bit, we're going to switch over to a contact list. We're going to find family members. So there'll be some method that says find the family members. We'll need to implement that to include only the family members. So we'll use a lot of looping there as a part of that. I won't finish all the way through. I'll get you started, and then I'll leave the rest up to you. So here we have our project. So node, we're going to need to run npm install or npm I. So I'll go and open up the terminal, run npm I to make sure everything's installed. I was going to read from the package.json file and install any dependencies, which looks like there are none, so that took a long time to install nothing. Now we need to run the tests, so we'll run node -test. So we're just running the basic tests. These are all failing, so I need to start making sure these pass. And there's quite a few tests in here, so we can see that they're all failing. The person name tests start here, starting with first last, so this definitely fails. It's saying it found object, but it wanted John Smith, so obviously that's a problem. So let's head into our tests. Let's take a look at the person name tests first. So here we have our first test. We're going to display first and last. We'll create a person name with John and Smith. We expect the value to be John Smith, and we're actually getting, again, object. So it's the implicit string value of the object, which is not what we want at all. Then we've got a first, middle, last, so we add a middle name, then a prefix, first, last suffix, and then finally, not quite finally, prefix, first, last suffix, and then finally, prefix, first, middle, last suffix with all 5 of those values. So let's start off. We'll start off with just the simple one, the first and last name. So let's head into our source. We'll look at person names. We see the person name class here. We can also see there's a person name prefix and a person name suffix. So what we want to do is implement toDisplayString here. So we've got toDisplayString, and right now what it's doing is just returning this .toString, which is built into JavaScript and basically just returns object. It returns the name of the object and the type of the object. And that's, again, not exactly what we want. So let's implement this. We're going to turn this into a full function. And we need to format the first and last. So we'll use basic string concatenation. String concatenation is where we take 2 or more strings and we simply butt them together. So for example, if I had the string Chad and I had another string Greer, so my 2 names, if I said, let's say the first plus space plus last, that would be Chad space Greer. So this is what's happening with concatenation. The plus sign not only does addition with numbers, it also does concatenation with strings. So it takes the value of the first, then adds to the end of that a space, and then adds to the end of that the last name. So we're going to do the same thing here. All we really need to do is just say return this dot first plus space plus this dot last. So if I rerun the test now, scroll up, family members. All right, so the first and last are not appearing here, and that is because it's not erroring out. So I think a node test, I have to go all the way to the top of the list. There we go. And so we see the person name summary displays first, last. This one passes. So we're in good shape on this one. Go and just clear that out to make it easier. So that takes care of the first one. The second one, we want to do first, middle, last. So back here, I can just add that in. So I'll add another plus, and then I'll add the middle name. So we'll run the node test here. Let's go up to the top. Let's contact list. There are 4 of those. Person name. So we've now made first, last fail, but we've made first, middle, last succeed. And the reason for that is this middle, let's look back up, we'll notice that it's now the first last is saying John space null space Smith. So we have this problem where middle is coming in with an extra space and the word null inside the first last. So here's where I need to introduce my first conditional. So what I'll do is I'll say if this dot middle is not equal to null, and I'm using the triple equal operator, so the exclamation and then double equal. This is not only null, but also, or not only the value, but also the type. So if that's the case, then we'll return that. So if there is a middle name, then we'll return it with middle. Otherwise, we'll return just the first last. So we'll get rid of one of the spaces and the middle name. So let's run our test again. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so the first two tests are now passing. So we have those working. So let's move on to the next test. The next test is going to add the prefix in. So now we want to add the prefix. So here we could simply add the prefix, but we're going to run into the same problem we had with middle. So what we need to do is make sure that we take into account that sometimes we have a prefix and sometimes we don't. So this is prefix first last, so there is no middle name. So we'll put this value here inside this else block. Now I could do another else if this prefix is not equal to null. Or I could do a nested if, and I'm going to do a nested if. Both of these work. There's not a right and wrong, so it's good to explore some of this and see how the code finally looks. What I'll do is I'll say if this dot prefix not equal to null, and there will be my else. We'll return this dot prefix plus space plus this dot first plus space plus this dot last. Let's run our test. Up. Let's get the concat tests. So we've got first last, we've got first, middle, last. Prefix first, last is not working. And you'll notice what's happening is it's formatting as object, John Smith. The reason for that is the prefix object is actually a full object. It's this thing here. And so again, it's just calling the toString to this. So what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to figure out how to format this correctly. Now, most of these are just going to add a period to the end of the name of it, but sir should not have a period, so we can't just always add a period. So we're going to need to do some formatting first. There might be a way to, there's actually several ways to do this. I'm going to just do this with a nested if-else up top. There are ways that you can do this with a switch case statement. There's also ways you can do this with inheritance, derivation. There's ways you can do this with composition. There are lots of ways you can do this. I'm going to just explore the conditional side of things. So what we'll do is we'll say let prefix string value equal, so we'll start off with null, and then we'll say if this dot prefix is not equal to null. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some fun if else. So we'll say if this dot prefix equals person name dot Mr. prefix string value equals Mr. Else if, and now we're going to do miss, else if misses, and I'm going to let AI just help me out here because it's doing exactly what I want. Else if sir, and that's exactly right. I want to make sure there is no period on sir, but there are periods on the others. Now I could do the null check here, so I could say else throw error, or I could say else prefix string value is null. So there's a few different ways to do this. I'm going to leave this as is because I wanted to show off how to do nested ifs, right? So I wanted to show you how nested ifs work. I wanted to show you their power. I also wanted to show you the if else if else if. So I wanted you to be able to see those. So I'm going to leave this code as is. So we've got a prefix string value, and then we're going to set that based on the value of the actual prefix itself. So coming back down, what I want to do is not just check this dot prefix. I want to check the prefix string value and then use that in my formatting. Let's run the test again. Back up. And we've got 3 passing tests so far. So we're making progress. I'm going to pause there on the person name side of things. We'll need to get suffix working, which will look very similar to the prefix. So the same way we did prefix, suffix you'll notice is its own way of doing things. So you can just do the same thing that we did a prefix. You could do something else if you wanted to, but you'll need to do another detection down in the main part of the code to try to figure out if that suffix value exists, and if it does, then how to format that. And then finally, just doing the combination to make sure everything works. So I'm going to switch gears now. So definitely try to finish that out. I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to go into contacts, so contact lists. So let's head into contact list tests here. And what we've got, our first test is saying, okay, we want to find family members. And all of these tests, what we're doing is we're creating some contacts, And then we're going to find the family members from that contact list, and we're going to make sure they're the ones that we expect. In the first list, we have a child, a parent, and a spouse. So we would actually expect the contacts to be all of them. All of these are family members, so we want them to be the same. The next method, the next test, we're going to have child, parent, spouse, friend, acquaintance, referral. So half of these are family members. So we're going to, and I'm using slice to do that, but we're going to get the first 3. Those are the ones we expect. The next one, there are no family members, friend, acquaintance, referral. So I'd expect the family members to be empty. And then finally, there's no contacts in the last one. I also expect it to be empty. So let's start off with, I'll clear this and rerun our test again. We'll notice that these are not passing at all. So the first one, we're getting null for the expected or the actual value. The next test does not pass. The third test does not pass. And then the fourth test does not pass. So none of these are passing. Let's find out why. So we'll head into the contacts file, and you'll notice in contacts, the contact list, find family members is just returning null. So I know for sure that's not what I want. So thinking through this, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create some sort of list that has the family members as we find them, and then we'll return that list at the end. So let's start with that. So we'll say const family members equals new list. We're going to return family members at the end, and in the middle, we're going to basically find the contacts and add them if they are family members. So we're going to combine a loop. We're going to add a conditional as a part of this. So there are several loops in there, and I do recommend exploring them. I'm going to use a for each loop, sometimes called a for of in JavaScript, but it's really a for each loop. The syntax is just a little different. So we'll say for const contact of this contacts. So let me make sure this is exactly what I can do. Yes, so this underscore contacts is my actual contact list. This is the underlying list of contacts that we have. So we're going to for each over the contacts and say for each contact in underscore contacts. Then we want to do some checking. So we'll say if contact type equals, and let's start with spouse. Then we're going to push that family member to that contact. So that takes care of spouse. Let's run the test and see if we have made any progress. So the first test is still failing. The second test is still failing. But the third and the fourth tests are passing. And this makes sense because we're not adding anything on those tests, so that's looking pretty good. So what I need to do now is I need to add parent and I need to add child to this. There's 2 different ways, well, at least 2 different ways, probably a bunch of different ways to do this. One of them is to do an or clause inside the if. So I can say if the contact type is spouse, or if the contact type is parent, and it's going to add all. I don't want to add all. So now you can see the code, what the code looks like here. So if the contact type is spouse or the contact type is parent, now we'll push. So that's one way to do this. Another way to do this is to do a separate if. So I'll simply say if is parent, family members contacts, family members not push the contact. Both of those work. There's not a right and a wrong. It just depends on what makes sense to you. The or is going to end up making this line here very, very long because we'll end up with two or joiners, so 3 different conditions. So that looks really, really long. So this one is a little easier to read with the if, or I can even do it as an else if, either way. But performance-wise, this isn't necessarily great, and we're duplicating the family members not push. So there's not a right and a wrong. There's always trade-offs in everything that we do. But I will leave it to you to finish up the rest of this, which is just add child. So again, do the or syntax. You could even combine them. You could do or syntax on one of these, and then do the if or else if on the other. Totally up to you on how you want to solve this, but see if you can run through that and get it solved. Finally, objective 3 is to vary your implementation. So once you've done that and got the test working, go back to your code, both in person name and contacts, and do different logic. See if you can do it. If you did an if else, try it with a switch case. If you did a switch case, try it with the ternary operator. Look up what the ternary operator is, see if you can try that. On your loops, you've got a for each here. Maybe try it with a while loop or a do while loop. Maybe try a for loop. So again, try some of these loops, try some of these conditionals, use them in different ways so you can see how they work. Once you know how they work, then you're going to be in a lot better position to decide which one makes the most sense.